Cop tries to humiliate black woman. Then she shows her FBI badge and the entire court falls silent. Maya Carter never expected a routine drive home would thrust her into the heart of a harrowing confrontation. Yet there she was, pulled over on a quiet stretch of highway as twilight settled over the sprawling suburbs of Jackson, Mississippi. The flashing blue lights felt ominous in the rearview mirror, a stark reminder that a split second can turn a peaceful evening into a battle for one's dignity. With her heart pounding and her mind racing, Maya steeled herself against the belittling words of the officer poised to humiliate her. What he didn't realize, however, was the badge she held, one that would silence an entire courtroom. Maya Carter was born on a blistering July afternoon in the heart of Jackson, Mississippi. From the start, her parents, Thomas and Aaliyah Carter, instilled in her a powerful sense of purpose. They came from a long line of people who had battled both seen and unseen forces for a seat at the table of opportunity. Her grandparents had marched for civil rights, her aunts and uncles became educators and activists, and her parents themselves were pillars of the community. Thomas Carter had served in the U.S. Army, a stern but fair father who believed in service and honor. Aaliyah Carter taught middle school English, the kind of teacher who recognized and nurtured hidden potential in every student who walked into her classroom. Growing up under the guidance of these two strong figures meant Maya learned the art of perseverance early on. Her father's work ethic set the tone. Maya would do chores with him every Saturday morning, rising before the sun to wash the car, clean the garage, and fix what needed fixing around the house. He believed that no matter what one's station in life was, the measure of a person could be taken by how they cared for the small tasks. Aaliyah, always empathetic and wise, taught Maya how words, whether uttered softly or in strident protest, could change the course of someone's life. From an early age, Maya found herself enamored with stories of law enforcement and justice. She pored over her father's old military manuals and devoured every mystery novel she could get her hands on. Observing the turbulence in Jackson, where local headlines frequently reported on tensions between police departments and communities of color, she felt drawn to become a bridge between those worlds. As a teenager, Maya volunteered at community centers, often tutoring children whose parents were incarcerated or caught in the judicial system's grinding gears. She saw the unfairness, but she also glimpsed hope. By the time Maya reached high school, she had one dream in mind: the FBI. She wanted to stand on the front lines and protect the powerless, to investigate the darkest corners of crime, and to ensure that people like her family, whose names might not echo loudly in the halls of power, still had advocates. She excelled in school, took a keen interest in computer science and forensics, and wrote essays that captured the attention of her teachers, who recognized a bright star in the making. She went on to attend Howard University in Washington, D.C., majoring in criminal justice while minoring in psychology. Maya thrived in the city, but she never lost touch with her roots in Jackson. Every semester break, she went home to volunteer at the local youth center, speaking with kids about career paths beyond what they saw daily. She promised them that there was a big world out there, and they could play any role they chose. Upon graduation, Maya applied to the FBI. During the rigorous recruitment process, complete with fitness tests, background checks, interviews, and psychological evaluations, she never wavered. When she was finally accepted, tears of joy streamed down her face, joined by tears of pride on her father's cheeks. She packed her bags for Quantico, Virginia, prepared to give her all in training. Maya was no stranger to challenges, but FBI Academy tested her mettle in ways she never expected. She had to push herself physically, mentally, and emotionally to handle everything from firearm proficiency to advanced interrogation techniques. Day by day, Maya grew stronger and more determined. Her classmates, many of whom lacked her personal experiences of being a black woman in America, found her perspective eye-opening. She was admired for her composed demeanor, the quiet confidence that came from a life spent navigating tough spaces. Upon graduation from Quantico, Maya was assigned to a field office in Washington, D.C., where she spent 2 intense years investigating financial crimes. Though not as glamorous as she had imagined, Maya threw herself into the details and became known for her meticulous approach and integrity. Finally, she requested a transfer closer to home. The FBI, recognizing her growing expertise and the benefits of having local understanding, granted her a position back in Jackson's smaller federal branch. It was the culmination of a lifelong journey. She could serve and protect her own community. None of her schooling, none of her training, and none of her deeply ingrained sense of service prepared her for the night she drove home. and the cop who would try to strip her of her dignity. In her mind, Maya believed in justice and the goodness of law enforcement, but she was about to experience a stark reminder that prejudice still thrived, even under the same badges she respected. It was late summer, and the heat of the day lingered into the evening air. Maya had just wrapped up a meeting with some local community organizers. She had been assisting them with an outreach program for families at risk of becoming entangled in gang violence. Feeling content and a bit tired, she decided to drive home around 8 p.m. The roads were virtually empty. The pine trees stretched on either side, their silhouettes looming in the headlights. Maya hummed her favorite jazz tune, turning the volume up to fill the space with the soothing sounds of saxophone. She planned a simple evening: call her mom, do some light reading for an ongoing fraud case, and maybe slip into bed a bit earlier than usual. That plan was upended when she saw the flashing blue lights of a police cruiser in her rearview mirror. At first, Maya assumed the officer wanted her to move aside, perhaps on a call or responding to an emergency. But then she realized the cruiser remained locked behind her, so she slowed and pulled to the shoulder. She switched off her music and took a moment to settle her nerves. Despite being an FBI agent, Maya knew well the tense nature of such stops, especially for black drivers in certain areas. She rolled down her window, placed both hands on the steering wheel, and waited. A tall, broad-shouldered figure approached her car. She could see him only by the glare of headlights behind him, illuminating his silhouette. By the time he reached her window, Maya spotted the name tag on his uniform: Officer Derek Thompson. "Yes, officer?" Maya said politely. His first words were acidic. "Do you know how fast you were going?" Maya frowned. She had been driving cautiously. "I believe I was going the speed limit, sir." He snorted. "Sure you were." His voice carried a condescending edge. "License, registration, and proof of insurance." Maya nodded, opening her glove compartment slowly. She produced the necessary documents and handed them over. She had done this drill countless times, both as a private citizen and as an agent. Still, her heart pounded a bit faster than usual. The tension in the air was palpable. He examined the documents with a crooked grin. "Maya Carter, is it?" He drew out her first name as though tasting something foreign. "From around here." She nodded. "Yes, officer, I live in Jackson." Officer Thompson reached for his radio but paused. He leaned in closer. "Your vehicle is a bit too nice for someone in your position." His tone made Maya's stomach churn. She knew what was coming. "You got any illegal substances or firearms in the car? Maybe some stolen property you want to tell me about?" "No, sir, I don't," she replied calmly. At that point, Maya felt the reflexive urge to flash her FBI badge and identify herself. Many times, such a measure diffused the situation, but Maya decided to see if this was just a routine stop. Perhaps Officer Thompson was simply aggressive in manner. After all, Maya knew that revealing her status too soon sometimes created more friction than necessary. Some local officers didn't take well to federal agents stepping on their toes, especially not in small jurisdictions. Thompson's lip curled. "Step out of the vehicle." "May I ask why, officer?" "Suspicion. You were swerving." Maya's heartbeat quickened. She knew she hadn't swerved. The road had been empty and she'd kept her car dead center in her lane. "I've had a long day, officer. I'm sure I didn't." "Are you refusing to comply?" He spat. His hand hovered near his holster. Maya took a deep breath, determined to keep the situation as calm as possible. "No, officer. I'll get out." She didn't want to escalate things by refusing. As she stepped out of her car, the brunt of Mississippi's summer heat wrapped around her. The stench of tar and the damp humidity made her shirt cling to her skin. Officer Thompson walked around her, shining a flashlight in her face, then at the interior of her car. His manner was theatrical, as though he were searching for contraband. "You mind explaining why you're driving this late?" he asked, voice dripping with suspicion. She was about to speak when he cut her off. "I'll tell you what this looks like to me," he said, leaning in. Maya sensed the hostility in the angle of his posture. "Late night, out on a rural stretch of road, fancy car registered to Maya Carter. We get a lot of folks running dope through here, you see. My guess? You got something in that trunk you don't want me to see." Maya forced herself to remain calm. "Officer, I've done nothing wrong. I was heading home. If you want to search the trunk, go ahead." He eyed her with skepticism. "You mind if I check your bag too?" Maya felt the world slow down. In her bag was her FBI identification. She had her standard wallet with her driver's license, but her official badge was in a discreet compartment of her purse. The question was, should she allow him to rummage through without telling him who she was, or should she produce her credentials and resolve this? She glanced at him. The look on his face told her that even if she revealed her badge, it might not diffuse the situation. Something about him felt toxic. "Officer, if you have probable cause to search my bag, I'll cooperate, but—" He smirked. "You're being awfully difficult, Miss Carter." His tone was borderline threatening, and Maya's patience wore thin. "I'm not being difficult, Officer Thompson. I'm aware of my rights, and I'm cooperating with your lawful request. If you would like to see inside my bag—" Suddenly, he grabbed the bag from the passenger seat. "We'll just see about that." Without waiting for her consent, he began rummaging through it, shining his flashlight. Maya stood inwardly seething, balancing her desire to keep peace with her knowledge that he was violating procedure. Moments later, he pulled out a small leather case. He flipped it open, shining the flashlight over it. His face registered shock, followed by immediate anger. "What the hell is this?" Maya took a steadying breath. "That's my FBI identification, sir." For a moment he stood there, flashlight shaking. The tension between them crystallized. Maya wasn't sure if he'd pivot to more aggression or attempt to backtrack and apologize. The air was electric. Officer Thompson let out a mirthless laugh. "FBI, huh?" He refused to hand the case back. "Well, Miss Big Shot, I see your big city credentials don't mean you get a free pass through my jurisdiction." Maya had heard the stereotypes about small-town officers who resented federal agents, but she'd never felt it this raw. She lifted her chin. "Officer, if you have nothing more to hold me for, I'd like to get on my way." He stared at her, a storm brewing behind his eyes. "That's not how this works. See, I'm calling in a local code 417, suspicious individual. We'll get you sorted at the station." "Suspicious individual?" Maya repeated, incredulous. "You have my ID. You know I'm an FBI agent. Why would you—" His flashlight flickered over her face. "Because I can." Two more words Maya dreaded. "Because I can." She had heard them enough times in stories, in testimonies about overreach and injustice. Now it was happening to her. She could argue, flash her credentials again, or even call her field office. But Maya also understood that in a deserted stretch of highway with an officer unafraid to cross lines, her safety could be at risk. She decided the best course was to remain calm, comply, and resolve this at the station. "Fine," she said, holding her head high. "But you're making a mistake." Officer Thompson turned his radio to a frequency. Maya couldn't make out what he was saying, but it was clear he was calling for backup. Moments later, a second patrol car arrived. A younger officer, looking more nervous than authoritative, stepped out. Thompson barked a few orders at him, and soon Maya was being placed in the back seat of a cruiser. She stared through the tinted windows, stunned by how quickly her world had shifted in a single traffic stop. Inside the station, she would be able to identify herself properly. There had to be some measure of protocol. She swallowed the lump in her throat and held back the tidal wave of anger and sadness. She thought of her father, mother, and the countless people who had endured humiliating run-ins. She told herself, this is why you joined law enforcement, to root out exactly this kind of abuse. Stay strong. The drive to the station was short, but it felt agonizingly long. The younger officer who drove the cruiser seemed uncomfortable with Maya's presence. Every time she caught his eyes in the rearview mirror, he looked away, as though he wasn't sure whether to treat her as a threat or a colleague. When they arrived at the modest, squat brick building that served as the local police station, Maya was taken into a fluorescent-lit hallway. Officer Thompson made sure to walk ahead, ignoring her presence altogether. Another uniformed officer, presumably a desk clerk, asked for Maya's details. "I already have them," Thompson snapped. "Run the name Maya Carter through the system." The clerk clicked away at a keyboard. Maya anticipated he'd find that she was indeed an FBI agent, which should end this fiasco. But Maya's agent status might not pop up the same way local records did. Federal credentials were often segmented in different systems, and Maya guessed this station was too small to have direct access. In theory, Thompson should have called the FBI field office if he truly doubted her identity, but so far, he'd shown no interest in due process. "Nothing unusual, officer," the desk clerk reported. "No outstanding warrants, no priors." Thompson glared. "That's because she's got friends in high places, no doubt." His voice dripped with sarcasm. Maya tried to interject. "Officer Thompson, I'm sure if you contact—" He waved her off and looked to the clerk. "Cell 2? The clerk blinked. "We only have one occupant in cell 1, so yes, we can put her in cell 2. He paused, uncertain, glancing at Maya. "This is a holding cell, not—" "That's fine," Thompson said, his tone final. "Take her in." Maya's heart pounded. She was going into a cell like a criminal. Still, she believed this was a bizarre mistake that a phone call to her FBI superiors could clear up in minutes. She walked calmly with the second officer, who avoided her gaze. The holding cell was small, with chipped paint on the walls. A single bench stood against one side, and a stainless steel toilet occupied a corner. The place smelled like stale sweat and disinfectant. When the bars clanked shut, Maya sank onto the bench, stifling the indignity of her predicament. Minutes ticked by, turning into an hour. She asked repeatedly to make a phone call. The younger officer muttered something about waiting for Officer Thompson's approval. Maya felt her frustration spike. This was an absolute violation of protocol. She took mental notes, determined to document every detail once she got out. At last, Thompson strode in, a self-satisfied smirk curling his lips. "How's the cell? Comfy?" Maya stared up at him. "I have the right to make a phone call, or better yet, I can show you my credentials in detail. Contact my field office." His eyes narrowed. "Oh, you want me to call your friends at the FBI? Right, I doubt you're that high up. Maybe you forged some ID. You think you can just waltz in here, wave some fancy badge, and walk away? Not in my town." "Look," Maya said, swallowing a surge of fury. "I'm trying to help you. Once you confirm who I am, you'll see." Thompson banged on the metal bars, the clang echoing. "I told you that's not how it works here. You're not making any phone calls until I decide. Tomorrow morning you can talk to the judge. We'll see if you're still bragging about your FBI credentials then." With that, he turned on his heel and left, leaving Maya trembling with a mix of anger and anxiety. She had faced down criminals during her investigations, but this was different. This was a twisted abuse of power by someone wearing the same uniform of law and order she had pledged to uphold. Night in a holding cell was worse than she imagined. The flickering overhead light hummed. Every so often, Maya heard a distant shout or the clang of another cell door. At some point, she dozed off, only to jerk awake at the slightest sound. Her mind churned. This has to be cleared up soon. Everyone at the FBI office will wonder why I haven't checked in. The moment I can call them, it'll be over. As dawn broke, Maya's hair was tousled, her clothes wrinkled. Fatigue etched lines in her usually bright eyes. The second officer, she saw from his badge his name was Officer Julian Park, came by to escort her out. "Time for court," he said quietly. He didn't sound malicious, more like resigned to following orders. She stepped out, stretching her legs stiff from a night on the bench. Another wave of humiliation. Maya Carter, FBI agent, being led in cuffs to a courthouse. Yet this was also a place she hoped logic and truth would prevail. The county courthouse was a modest building with faded brick walls and a small flight of steps leading to the main doors. In bigger jurisdictions, Maya might have had more allies. Here, in this insular environment, she felt alone. She knew how courts typically operated, but being a defendant, even for a farcical charge, was jarring. Officer Thompson seemed to enjoy the attention as he guided Maya into the building. She could feel the curious stares of passers-by, the hushed murmurs. In the corridor, a few attorneys milled about. One, a middle-aged black woman in a neatly pressed suit, locked eyes with Maya briefly, her expression a mix of confusion and concern. Maya was marched into a small courtroom. The wooden pews were half empty, with a few folks waiting for their own hearings. At the front was a raised platform where the judge would soon preside. A single American flag stood to one side, next to the state flag of Mississippi. The overhead lights flickered slightly, and the smell of old leather from the chairs lingered in the air. After a few minutes of tense silence, Judge Karen Ellison entered, wearing her black robe and a stern expression. Court was in session. The bailiff announced the schedule, reading off names of individuals who would appear. Maya's turn came last, presumably because Thompson wanted to make a show of it. The judge eyed Maya with mild curiosity. Maya stood in front of the bench, flanked by Thompson, who had to state the nature of the arrest. The courtroom was quieter than a tomb. "Yes, Your Honor," Thompson began, clearing his throat. "I pulled Miss Carter over for erratic driving. She seemed under the influence, perhaps. She refused to cooperate, raised suspicion, and claimed she was an FBI agent. Her ID is questionable, so I brought her in on charges of resisting arrest and possible forged identification. Maya felt her blood boiling. Thompson had twisted the story beyond recognition. She opened her mouth to speak, but she didn't have a defense counsel yet, and the judge asked Thompson another question, ignoring Maya's attempt. "Officer Thompson," Judge Ellison said, "did you perform a sobriety test?" Thompson paused. Well, not exactly, Your Honor, but I had cause to believe she was swerving and acting erratically." The judge's expression hardened a fraction. "Cause to believe? Did you find any substances or weapons in her car?" "No, Your Honor." "And these FBI credentials you mention, have you made any attempt to verify them?" Thompson cleared his throat awkwardly. "I tried calling a contact, but it was after hours and I got no immediate response." Judge Ellison's eyebrows rose. "Officer Thompson, if Miss Carter is indeed an FBI agent, that drastically changes the nature of these charges. You realize the seriousness of arresting a federal officer without probable cause?" Maya watched Thompson shift uncomfortably. This was a glimmer of hope. Someone was finally asking the right questions. But Maya also felt a twinge of dread. She'd encountered judges who saw local officers as infallible. She needed more concrete proof to clear herself. The judge turned to Maya. "Miss Carter, do you have legal representation?" Maya shook her head. "No, Your Honor, not at the moment. This happened unexpectedly. I spent the night in a holding cell with no opportunity to call an attorney or my field office." She spoke with calm composure, determined not to appear rattled. Judge Ellison's eyes flashed with concern. "That's highly unusual. Everyone should be granted a phone call or access to counsel." She eyed Thompson again. "Officer Thompson, is this correct?" He shrugged, feigning innocence. "She was uncooperative and belligerent, Your Honor. We had to follow procedure. She's trying to talk her way out of trouble with that badge." Before Maya could reply, the door to the courtroom swung open with a creak. In walked a man Maya recognized immediately. Special Agent Marcus Wheeler, one of her senior colleagues from the FBI field office. He strode with purpose, wearing a tailored gray suit. A hush fell over the court as he approached the bench. Agent Wheeler introduced himself in a measured tone. "Good morning, Your Honor. I am Special Agent Marcus Wheeler from the FBI's Jackson field office. I received a concerning report this morning that one of our agents was detained without probable cause. I'm here to clarify the matter on behalf of the Bureau." A ripple of surprise coursed through the small crowd. Judge Ellison nodded, seemingly relieved to have official clarification. "Agent Wheeler, can you confirm Miss Carter's status as an FBI agent?" He nodded, producing documentation. "Yes, Your Honor. Maya Carter is a fully qualified special agent. We have her credentials on file, along with her official badge number, which matches the one Officer Thompson confiscated. She's been serving in the Bureau for 4 years with no incidents on her record." Thompson's face flushed crimson, but he attempted to keep his composure. "Your Honor, I had no way of verifying that last night." Maya interjected this time, her voice steady. "With all due respect, Officer Thompson refused to let me make any phone calls, nor did he attempt to properly verify my status with the FBI. He said he had cause to detain me, but never performed a proper test or provided a lawyer." Judge Ellison pressed her lips together, her gaze flicking between Maya, Agent Wheeler, and Thompson. "Officer Thompson, this is problematic. I'm inclined to release Miss Carter immediately and dismiss these charges. I suggest we set an evidentiary hearing to look into your conduct during the arrest." The hush in the courtroom was absolute. Thompson glared at Maya, but she could see fear in his eyes. He opened his mouth to protest, but the judge raised a hand. "Officer Thompson, you will return Miss Carter's property, including any identification or personal belongings, effective immediately," Judge Ellison declared. "I'll be scheduling a hearing for the day after tomorrow to review your account of probable cause. Until then, Miss Carter is free to go." Maya exhaled deeply, relief washing over her. Yet she knew she was far from done. If a hearing was scheduled, she would have the opportunity to bring to light every misstep and unethical act Officer Thompson had committed. She also suspected that the news would ripple through the local law enforcement community, potentially turning some officers against her. But Maya was ready. Justice needed to be served. Thompson removed her handcuffs, practically throwing them off in frustration. He stalked away, refusing to meet Maya's eyes. Agent Wheeler guided her out of the courtroom, handing her a small bottle of water once they were in the corridor. "Thank you," Maya murmured, grateful beyond words for his timely arrival. "Thank the judge's clerk," Wheeler replied, a note of irony in his voice. They realized what was going on and alerted us. Maya, are you okay? She nodded, her voice a bit shaky. I'm furious, humiliated, but I'll live. I want to see this through. He can't just get away with it. Agent Wheeler's expression was grim. And you shouldn't let him. We'll support you. This is exactly the type of misconduct that undermines trust in law enforcement. You up for a fight? Maya met his gaze. Yes, 100%. The next few days flew by in a whirlwind of preparations. Maya filed an official report with the FBI's Internal Affairs Department, detailing every interaction she'd had with Thompson. She also engaged a local civil rights attorney recommended by a friend. The attorney, Tamara McKnight, was the same woman Maya had seen in the courthouse hallway, a seasoned litigator who had made her name by taking on police misconduct cases. Tamara was known in Jackson for her fiery determination and her refusal to be intimidated. Maya also faced the emotional toll of relaying the story to her parents. She waited until after her release, wanting to spare them a sleepless night. Her mother's voice cracked with concern over the phone. Her father, normally stoic, asked, "Do you want me to come down to the station with you, or be at the courthouse?" Maya gently declined. She appreciated the support, but this was something she needed to handle in her professional capacity. Inside Maya's FBI field office, the atmosphere was tense. Many of her colleagues were outraged that a local officer had treated one of their own so blatantly. Some offered Maya advice on how to handle the hearing. A few warned that going against local law enforcement could strain relationships crucial to collaborative work. Maya understood, but she also knew the difference between honest collaboration and letting misconduct slide. Agent Wheeler backed her up. "We can't just sweep this under the rug. This is the exact reason our relationships with certain communities are fragile. If we're not willing to call out wrongdoing, we don't deserve the badge." The day before the hearing, Maya met with Tamara McKnight to finalize strategy. They sat in the attorney's small but well-appointed office on Farish Street, a historically black neighborhood in Jackson. Tamara's polished nails tapped rhythmically on the polished oak desk as she listened to Maya recount the night's events in detail. "Thompson basically orchestrated the entire situation," Maya explained. "He took away my bag, rummaged through it, found my credentials, and still acted like I was lying." Tamara nodded, scribbling notes on a legal pad. "We'll emphasize the lack of probable cause, the deprivation of your right to a phone call or attorney, and the fact that he had your ID but didn't even bother to properly verify it." Maya leaned forward. "He also claimed I was belligerent. He has no body cam footage to back that up, right?" Tamara's eyebrows lifted. "Body cameras are mandatory in some departments, but from what I can gather, that might not be strictly enforced in his precinct. If there's no footage, it becomes a matter of your word versus his. The difference is, we have your FBI colleague who can testify about your character and how we responded as soon as we found out." "Good," Maya said. "I want to make sure the court understands this wasn't a mistake. It was willful misconduct. He had every opportunity to check my identity." Tamara's eyes softened. "You have every right to be angry. But remember, the court hearing tomorrow is about your charges. The official misconduct investigation into Thompson is a separate process. However, if the judge sees enough evidence that Thompson acted in bad faith, that will strengthen any civil case you might bring." Maya hesitated. "A civil case? Should I?" Tamara nodded firmly. "Absolutely. A civil rights suit, possibly 42 U.S.C. Section 1983, for violation of your Fourth Amendment rights. But let's get through tomorrow first." They parted with a sense of resolve. Maya felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Over the years, she had worked to foster good relations between the FBI and local police. Now she was forced into the role of adversary to one of them. She reminded herself that this was about justice, not personal vendetta. The morning of the hearing dawned gray and overcast, matching Maya's mood. She chose a simple black pantsuit, pinned her FBI badge discreetly to her inside pocket, and drove to the courthouse with Tamara. Though Maya could have arrived in an official government vehicle, she wanted to keep it as understated as possible, not turning the proceeding into a spectacle. Outside the courthouse, a small group of onlookers had gathered, presumably family members of others set to appear in court. A local news crew hovered, apparently alerted to the unique case of FBI agent versus local cop. Maya felt a twinge of nerves as she spotted a reporter eyeing her. She wasn't used to public attention, preferring her investigative work behind the scenes, but she squared her shoulders. If raising awareness could prevent the next fiasco like this, so be it. Tamara marched beside her with unwavering confidence. They entered the building and found the courtroom bustling. Officer Thompson stood near his counsel, a wiry man in a rumpled blazer who glanced dismissively in Maya's direction. Judge Ellison entered, gavel in hand. Once more, hush fell over the room. Court is now in session regarding the case of Maya Carter. Charges: alleged obstruction of an officer and providing false identification. The judge's voice echoed through the space. Thompson's counsel looked anxious. Maya took her seat beside Tamara, her heart pounding but her posture composed. The judge began. We have new evidence and testimony to consider. Miss McKnight, you may proceed. Tamara rose, adjusting her suit jacket. Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to call Maya Carter to testify about the events of the night in question. Maya stepped up to the witness stand. She was sworn in and began, under Tamara's guidance, recounting the timeline. The initial stop, Thompson's aggressive demeanor, his rummaging through her purse to find her FBI credentials, and how he had kept her in a holding cell without allowing a phone call. Tamara's questions were clear and methodical, designed to paint a picture of an officer who had exceeded his authority. Maya answered calmly, refusing to let her frustration color her tone. She cited her training, how traffic stops should be conducted, and the standard procedures for verifying government IDs. When Tamara finished, Thompson's lawyer rose. Miss Carter, you claim Officer Thompson rummaged through your bag without permission. Did you explicitly refuse him, or did you simply not cooperate? Maya bristled but kept her voice steady. I offered to cooperate with a lawful search if he had probable cause. He never stated a clear probable cause, beyond an unsubstantiated claim that I was a swerving. And he didn't wait for my permission. He took my bag and searched it. How can you be sure you didn't swerve? The lawyer pressed. Maya inhaled, maintaining composure. I was attentive to the road. There was no one else on that stretch. I know I was following the speed limit too. So it's your word against his. Tamara objected. The officer did not administer any sobriety test or body cam footage to confirm Miss Carter was driving erratically. There was no report of weaving from other drivers. It's pure speculation. Judge Ellison nodded. Sustained. Please continue, counselor. The lawyer sneered slightly but carried on. Fine. If Miss Carter is indeed an FBI agent, one might wonder why she didn't identify herself immediately to Officer Thompson to avoid confusion. Maya's eyes flashed. That's a courtesy? Officers usually identify themselves and we comply with instructions. I provided my driver's license and registration. I expected him to conduct a routine check. Only when he escalated the situation did I reveal my FBI credentials. Regardless, nothing excuses him ignoring me once he had the badge. The lawyer scowled and sat down. Tamara subtly grinned at Maya, then turned to the judge. Your Honor, I'd like to call Special Agent Marcus Wheeler to corroborate Miss Carter's status and discuss the call logs from our office on that evening. Agent Wheeler took the stand next. He presented phone records showing Maya's repeated attempts to check in around 8 p.m., then her abrupt radio silence, alarming enough for the FBI to look into it the next morning. He also detailed their internal verification system, which would have confirmed Maya's identity had Officer Thompson or his station made a proper request. Thompson's lawyer tried to counter by suggesting the FBI's system might not be readily accessible to local law enforcement overnight. But Wheeler calmly explained that the station only needed to leave a message or call the main line. An on-call agent would have responded within 30 minutes. The fact that no attempt was made indicated a deliberate withholding of Maya's rights. The judge turned to Thompson, who stood looking sullen by the defense table. Officer Thompson, do you have any witnesses or evidence? He cleared his throat. I do not, Your Honor. The dash cam was under repair. My partner that night was a new recruit, so he didn't record anything, but I maintain Miss Carter was acting suspiciously. Judge Ellison's face remained impassive. Why didn't you administer a sobriety test or at least conduct a thorough search under standard procedure? She was resistant, Thompson muttered. Claimed to be FBI. I wanted to handle it at the station. Without letting her make a phone call or verifying her identity? Thompson's eyes darted nervously. Yes, Your Honor, I was doing my job. Questionable interpretation of your job, Judge Ellison said, her voice frosty. The hearing recessed for a brief period while the judge considered the evidence. Maya felt the tension coil in her stomach. Tamara gave her a reassuring nod, but Maya's mind raced with all possible outcomes. She knew the law was on her side, but local politics could sometimes tilt the scales in unexpected ways. When Judge Ellison returned, the entire courtroom fell silent. "I find that Officer Thompson lacked probable cause for the traffic stop, mishandled Miss Carter's detention, and failed to adhere to proper procedure regarding the verification of her federal credentials. The charges against Miss Carter, obstruction of an officer and providing false identification, are hereby dismissed. Furthermore, I'm recommending an internal investigation into Officer Thompson's conduct, and I will request that the District Attorney's Office review possible charges of official misconduct." A tangible wave of relief washed over Maya. Thompson's face reddened, and she could see rage flicker behind his eyes. The judge banged the gavel and the hearing concluded. The watchers in the gallery murmured, some with shock, others with satisfaction. Maya felt a sense of vindication, but also a profound sense of sadness. Sadness that it had to come to this, that a fellow officer of the law could abuse power so wantonly. Outside the courtroom, reporters swarmed. Tamara gently shielded Maya, who offered a brief statement. "I'm grateful the court recognized the misuse of power in this case. My hope is that this incident sparks a larger conversation about accountability, training, and respect between law enforcement and the communities they serve." Then they broke away, Maya's heart pounding with a mixture of triumph and resolve. She wanted to savor the moment, but she knew the fight wasn't over. Thompson had tasted power once and might not give it up so easily. Over the next few weeks, Maya stayed busy. Officially, she was back on her regular FBI assignments. Unofficially, she became the center of attention in Jackson. News outlets debated the story. Cop arrests, FBI agent, racial profiling, or genuine mistake. Maya received dozens of messages, some supportive, some hateful. Her family shielded her from the worst, but Maya still felt the sting of certain voices calling her a traitor to law enforcement, or worse, a black supremacist. An unexpected twist arrived when an anonymous tip was delivered to Maya's office. It was a sealed envelope containing a single piece of paper with the words, "Ask about Thompson's time in Gulfport." Intrigued, Maya asked Tamara to do some digging. Tamara's research revealed that Thompson had indeed served as an officer in Gulfport, Mississippi, but there were rumors he'd left under suspicious circumstances, a departmental complaint about excessive force that never reached the public. This spurred Maya to investigate further. She consulted with FBI colleagues who had access to broader law enforcement records. Soon Maya uncovered a pattern. Thompson had a string of civilian complaints alleging harassment and abuse, specifically targeting black drivers, young men, and sometimes even the homeless population. None of these complaints stuck, mostly due to lack of corroborating evidence or refusal of the complainants to pursue legal action. Maya suspected intimidation tactics might have played a role. When Tamara saw the file, she whistled low. "This is a pattern of misconduct. If we bring this to the district attorney, it could bolster any criminal charges." Maya nodded. "It's time to ensure he can't hide behind lack of evidence. We have a new judge's recommendation. We should work with the DA." Their plan was to coordinate a meeting with the DA, present the newly found records, and push for a formal inquiry that could lead to Thompson's suspension or dismissal. Maya felt a sense of responsibility. It wasn't just about her own case anymore. It was about stopping a repeat offender from abusing others. True to Maya's instincts, backlash from local law enforcement circles grew. Some officers sided with Maya, disgusted by Thompson's actions. Others viewed her as a meddling federal agent, making them all look bad. Maya did her best to keep her head down, focusing on the mission. It was late one evening when Maya left the FBI field office. Streetlights flickered and the thick Mississippi air clung to her skin. She carried a stack of files, casework to review at home. As she reached her car, a voice behind her murmured, "Agent Carter." Maya whirled around, hand instinctively moving toward her holster. Standing there, half hidden in the shadows, was Officer Julian Park, the younger officer who'd driven her to the station that night. "Officer Park." Maya's heart quickened. "What are you doing here?" He shifted nervously. "I needed to speak to you, alone." She studied him. He didn't appear aggressive. If anything, he looked uneasy, maybe even fearful. Maya glanced at her watch. "All right, speak." Park stepped forward into the glow of a nearby streetlight. He looked pale and sweaty, as if second-guessing his decision to come. "I want to apologize for my role that night. I didn't agree with Thompson's approach, but I was a rookie, scared to speak up. Maya softened a fraction. I understand, but you know what happened was wrong. He nodded, swallowing hard. Yes, it was. There's something you should know. Thompson's been bragging around the station about how he's going to get you back. I don't know details, but he's got friends in certain places. He wants to sabotage your credibility. Maybe plant something to frame you. I overheard him talking to an old buddy. Said something like, "She'll wish she never crossed me." Despite years in law enforcement, Maya felt a chill. Why are you telling me this? Park looked at his feet. Because I can't live with myself if something bad happens. He's done this before to people, set them up. I think he's capable of it. Maya's mind raced. She remembered Tamara's research on Thompson's past. Thank you for the warning. I'll be careful. You realize you might have to testify if it comes to that. Park's face grew even paler. If I have to, I will. I just can't keep quiet anymore. Maya nodded, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. I appreciate it. You're doing the right thing. Please be cautious. Park fled into the night, leaving Maya with a sense of foreboding. Thompson was more than just a loose cannon. He was vindictive. She steeled herself, knowing that confronting bullies often provokes them into lashing out. She decided to inform Agent Wheeler and Tamara. This time, she vowed, if Thompson tried anything crooked, she'd be ready. After receiving Park's warning, Maya crafted a plan with Agent Wheeler. They approached the FBI's internal affairs and the local DA's office, explaining the potential threat. With the DA's cooperation, Maya's car and personal belongings were discreetly equipped with hidden trackers and cameras. If Thompson attempted to plant evidence, they'd catch him red-handed. Days dragged on with no sign of trouble, but Maya remained vigilant. She carried out her regular duties, visited local community centers for outreach, and continued investigating ongoing fraud cases. In the background, she was also assisting Tamara in building the civil case. Tamara found additional individuals willing to share how Thompson had harassed them, mostly off the record, but Maya hoped at least one or two would formally testify. Then, late one afternoon, Maya left her office to find her car's passenger door slightly ajar. Her heart skipped. She always locked her car. Approaching with caution, she saw the interior had been rifled through, papers from her glove compartment strewn about. Maya drew her gun, scanning the area for any sign of movement. Whoever did this was gone. Slowly, Maya peered inside. A Ziploc bag of suspicious white powder lay on the passenger seat, an obvious attempt to frame her. Maya felt a flush of anger, but also a grim sense of vindication. She pressed her phone to call Wheeler and local authorities who were part of the sting. Within minutes, a specialized team arrived, dusting for prints and collecting the bag as evidence. The hidden camera Maya had installed in her car's dome light had captured everything. When Maya viewed the footage later, her suspicions were confirmed. Clear as day, Officer Derek Thompson's angry features filled the screen. He'd picked the lock, rummaged through Maya's vehicle, and placed the bag of drugs. He even muttered to himself, "Let's see you talk your way out of this, FBI princess." Maya's breath caught in her throat. Park's warning had been accurate. This was far beyond a petty grudge. This was a serious felony. But Maya also had all the evidence needed to bring Thompson down. Within a week, the district attorney's office filed charges against Thompson for tampering with evidence, attempted entrapment, and other violations. The case moved swiftly, given the clarity of the video and Thompson's prior record of complaints. Maya served as the key witness. In a twist of irony, they found themselves back in the same courthouse, standing before Judge Ellison once more. This time, Maya wasn't the defendant. She was the principal witness for the prosecution. The courtroom buzzed with reporters, local activists, and curious members of the public. The tension was palpable. Thompson entered, flanked by his new lawyer, an older, more imposing figure. The video evidence was played on a large screen. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Thompson was clearly seen placing the drugs in Maya's car. The defense tried to argue that the footage might have been tampered with, but the FBI forensics unit had verified its authenticity. They also tried to claim Maya had a vendetta and set Thompson up, but the presence of the camera had been authorized in advance by the DA, precisely because Maya had been warned about Thompson's intentions. Park testified, his voice shaking but resolute. He described the conversation he overheard, Thompson bragging about framing Maya. The defense accused Park of being a disgruntled rookie. Still, Park held firm, repeating, "I heard him plan to plant evidence. I had to speak out." Maya took the stand last. She recounted the emotional toll of Thompson's harassment, the night in the holding cell, and how she'd been forced to take precautions. Tamara sat in the gallery, quietly observing. Finally, the moment arrived for closing arguments. The prosecutor emphasized Thompson's history of misconduct, the video evidence, and the sworn testimony of Maya and Officer Park. Thompson's lawyer tried a last-ditch tactic, painting Maya as power-hungry, exploiting the FBI for personal revenge. But Maya's calm demeanor and the undeniable video footage rendered that line of argument hollow. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. Their verdict, guilty on multiple counts, including evidence tampering and misconduct. A hush fell over the room. Thompson glowered at Maya with undisguised hatred as the bailiff escorted him away. Maya didn't gloat. She felt a conflicted mixture of relief and sorrow. Another officer, sworn to uphold the law, had chosen the path of corruption and discrimination. He'd harmed not only her, but countless others before her. After the conviction, Maya learned that Thompson faced possible prison time. The sentencing hearing took place weeks later. Victims from his past came forward. Some gave statements about how he had illegally searched them, threatened them, and destroyed their trust in law enforcement. The judge sentenced him to 4 years in state prison, with the possibility of parole after 2. Following the sentencing, Maya stepped out of the courthouse, the sun warm against her face. Tamara joined her, a small smile on her lips. "You did it," she said, patting Maya's shoulder. "Justice served." Maya released a tremulous sigh. "Part of me still feels sad. He wore that uniform. I used to idolize the uniform." Tamara nodded. "A uniform doesn't automatically come with integrity. You showed a lot of courage, Maya." In the ensuing days, Maya's civil suit proceeded smoothly. The municipality settled quickly to avoid a protracted trial. Maya insisted a portion of the settlement be directed to local civil rights and youth mentorship programs. She wanted something good to come from the injustice she endured. Media coverage turned Maya into a minor local celebrity. Some praised her bravery, others resented the scrutiny she brought upon the police force. But Maya knew it was bigger than her. If her ordeal prevented even one more person from experiencing such abuse, it was worth it. In private moments, she wrestled with the emotional aftermath, flashbacks of the holding cell, that feeling of powerless rage. Her father took her fishing one weekend, offering quiet support, letting the tranquil waters soothe her nerves. Her mother cooked her favorite meals, telling her how proud the entire family was. Agent Wheeler assured her that the FBI's upper ranks applauded her stand against corruption. Maya returned to her normal life, investigating white-collar crimes and helping the community from the inside out. The stares and whispers gradually died down, replaced by a quiet respect for the agent who wouldn't compromise her principles. Months later, Maya found herself driving on that same stretch of highway where Thompson had first pulled her over. It was dusk, and the pines lined the road as before. This time, there were no flashing lights in her rearview mirror. She reflected on how far she had come since that fateful night. The experience had shaken her faith in parts of the system, but it also reaffirmed her commitment to uphold the law in its truest sense, fair, equitable, and just. As Maya neared home, she remembered all the faces who had stood by her, the judge who listened, the attorney who fought, the colleague who believed, and even the rookie officer who found his conscience. She also thought of those who were too afraid or discouraged to speak out when victimized by authorities. She vowed to keep fighting for them, to be a champion for accountability. In that promise, Maya found a renewed sense of purpose, driving forward into the future with her head held high, the memory of her FBI badge gleaming, a testament to her unyielding resolve for justice. Maya Carter never expected a routine drive home would thrust her into the heart of a harrowing confrontation. Yet there she was, pulled over on a quiet stretch of highway as twilight settled over the sprawling suburbs of Jackson, Mississippi. The flashing blue lights felt ominous in the rearview mirror, a stark reminder that a split second can turn a peaceful evening into a battle for one's dignity. With her heart pounding and her mind racing, Maya steeled herself against the belittling words of the officer poised to humiliate her. What he didn't realize, however, was the badge she held, one that would silence an entire courtroom. Maya's triumphant stand against misconduct reminds us all that justice can prevail when truth meets courage. Her nightmarish ordeal began with a single traffic stop, but ended up shining a spotlight on the destructive power of unchecked bias. Her resilience, and the support of those brave enough to speak out, proved that no one is above the law, not even those who wear the badge. If Maya's story resonates with you, help amplify its message by hitting that like button and sharing this video with your friends. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for more inspiring and eye-opening stories that spark conversations about integrity, equality, and the pursuit of justice. Together, we can keep these vital issues on everyone's radar, ensuring that accountability remains a priority in every corner of our communities. Thank you for watching, and remember, real change starts with each of us.